Elders Antoinette LaFleur and Émile Janvier are on their way to Rome to see the Pope. Janvier will deliver a prayer during the visit in his Dene language and ultimately hopes for an apology from the Catholic Church. In an emailed statement, he said, "We talk about truth and reconciliation. Who do you reconcile with without sorry?" The MNS says the Métis experience in residential schools has been largely forgotten and ignored, particularly by the federal government. Survivors and families from the Ile-á-la-Crosse and Timber Bay residential schools were denied settlements and apologies that other survivors have received. MNS Vice President Michelle LeClaire says Saskatchewan has some of the oldest residential schools in Canada.
Ile-a-Crosse is one of the biggest Métis schools that were run by the Catholic Church for about 125 years. So we're talking 6 generations of trauma. And mostly Métis kids went to those schools, right? And so it was no different than an Indian residential school in terms of if the kids didn't show up to the school, the priest would be on the boat with the RCMP officer, and those kids would be going to schools.
A memorandum of understanding was signed in 2019 between the MNS, the federal government, and a committee representing the survivors of the Ile-á-la-Crosse school. It stated that being left out of the survivor settlement scheme has had an impact on the entire Métis community in Saskatchewan. Work on the memorandum items is ongoing, but LeClaire says Métis people just want acknowledgement.
The Métis story is always sort of like here, and then the First Nation story is here and the Inuit. So we're really wanting the acknowledgement that our survivors went through the same kinds of trauma that children in Indian residential schools went through. If we looked at the unmarked graves, we don't know how many of those kids were First Nations or Métis, but that experience was together.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.